Hey friends, before the story begins, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more true-to-life stories about family, betrayal, and revenge. The fireworks over Prague cracked open the winter sky like broken glass. From the terrace of my father-in-law's townhouse near Malastrana, I could see the Vltava reflecting red and gold, the Charles Bridge packed with tourists lifting phones and champagne flutes. Inside, the warmth smelled of roast duck, clove-spiced wine, and old money. I stood near the window, one hand wrapped around a glass I hadn't touched, listening to my wife's family laugh. They laughed easily. They always had. I had spent 12 years trying to earn a place inside that laughter. At exactly midnight, as the bells of St. Nicholas rang, Viktor Havel raised his glass. He was 70 now, but still carried himself like the steel magnate he'd been in the 90s. Broad shoulders, iron gray hair, eyes sharp enough to measure profit in a heartbeat. Family, he said, smiling. And the future. Everyone quieted. Even my wife, Lenka, squeezed my arm without looking at me. Viktor's gaze slid to me, just for a second too long. And speaking of the future, he continued, we've decided it's time for change. We're going to replace you with someone else. You're too comfortable. The word landed softly, comfortably, like a knife pressed slow into skin. Laughter rippled, uncertain at first, then louder as Viktor waved his hand. Don't look so serious. Business is business. But he didn't take it back. He never did. I felt the heat rise in my face. Around me, crystal glasses clinked. Lenka's hand slipped from my arm. I had married into the Havel family believing work and loyalty mattered. I had given up my own small architecture firm in Brno to manage Viktor's real estate division, reviving abandoned factories, turning them into glossy apartments for foreign investors. I had worked nights, weekends, winters so cold the scaffolding burned your hands. And now, on New Year's Eve, in front of everyone, I was being erased. Viktor's son, Peter, gave me a thin smile from across the room. He'd never forgiven me for being competent. Lenka's mother, Elena, stared into her wine like it held answers she didn't want to share. Lenka finally looked at me. Her eyes were wet but unreadable. We'll talk later, she whispered. I nodded because that's what I'd always done. Outside, snow began to fall. Thick, quiet, relentless. That night, lying in our apartment overlooking Letna Park, Lenka turned her back to me. The fireworks faded. The city slept. I stared at the ceiling and thought about my father. He had been a machinist under communism, a man who believed dignity came from work, even when the work was stolen from you. When the factories closed in the 90s, he drank himself into silence. I had sworn I'd never let another man decide my worth. Yet here I was. The replacement arrived in January. His name was Marek, young, polished, foreign-educated. Viktor paraded him through meetings like a trophy. I was asked to transition responsibilities, a polite way of hollowing me out. At home, Lenka grew distant. She stayed late at her parents' house. When I asked her where we stood, she said, "Please don't make this harder." That was when I understood. The betrayal wasn't just professional. It was inherited. I started paying attention. I noticed how Viktor moved money between shell companies registered in Cyprus, how certain properties were undervalued before being sold to family friends, how Peter's gambling debts disappeared quietly every quarter. They had taught me everything, assuming I'd always be grateful enough to stay silent. Spring came early that year. The snow melted into the Vltava, swollen and brown. I began collecting documents, emails, contracts, audio recordings from meetings where Viktor's voice still boomed with confidence, unaware it was being archived. Lenka found the files one evening. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Protecting myself," I said. She cried then, real tears, and told me about her grandfather, the original Havel patriarch, who had collaborated quietly with the regime, trading favors for factories confiscated from others. The family fortune was built on silence and replacement, always replacing the inconvenient. "You can't fight them," she said. "They'll destroy you." I kissed her forehead and realized, with a dull ache, that she would never stand beside me, only between me and them. By summer, Viktor announced his retirement gala, to be held in a renovated opera house in Vienna. One last performance. Politicians, investors, journalists. A celebration of legacy. I sent the invitations myself. On the night of the gala, the Danube shimmered under moonlight. Inside, chandeliers glowed. Victor gave a speech about family values and progress. Lenka sat in the front row, pale and rigid. When the screens behind him lit up, it wasn't the montage he'd prepared. It was contracts, numbers, dates. My voice filled the hall, calm, recorded months earlier. "This is how you replace people," it said. "You erase them quietly." Gasps, whispers. Phones rose like a forest. Victor turned, confusion cracking into rage. Petter stood up, shouting. Security moved too late. Journalists smelled blood. I walked onto the stage then. The lights were blinding. My hands were steady. "I built what you're standing on," I said. "And now I'm taking my name back." The fallout was swift. Investigations, resignations, frozen accounts. Victor suffered a stroke before charges were filed. Petter fled. Elena disappeared into a spa in Switzerland. Lenka left me. In autumn, I returned to Brno. The air smelled of wet leaves and coal smoke. I reopened my old office, smaller now, quieter. Some nights, guilt sat with me like an extra shadow. Other nights, I slept without dreams. Revenge didn't make me whole, but it broke the cycle. On New Year's Eve, 1 year later, I stood alone on a bridge over the Svratka River. Fireworks bloomed again, distant and bright. I raised a glass to no one. I had been replaced, and I had survived.